Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Hey guys, what's this? The EU has to change, but how? I didn't know it. I don't know. I don't have an opinion here because I really don't know that much about the EU, but I'm trying to learn. Original link to the video, top of the description from EU Made Simple guys. Great channel, preemptive like. Yeah, I'm interested. I'm captivated. Let's go.
Let's dial back the clock to the Conference on the Future of Europe in 2022, where citizens across the continent delivered a clear mandate to the EU. Scrap the veto vote, amplify the Parliament's power for a more democratic EU, and unify under a single EU president. In fact, with 49 proposals on the table, EU citizens sent a very clear message to our leaders. The EU must change. Fueled by this mandate, the European...
Guys, I love, really do, as the more older I get, the older I get, the more I am interested in politics outside of just the USA. And European Union, big powerhouse on the world stage. I don't know that much. I'm probably going to have a lot of questions here. And you guys are really awesome at helping me with answers down below. So let's go.
Parliament, EU must change. Fueled by this mandate, the European Parliament got down to business, drafting an ambitious list of reforms. On the screen, you can see a summary of the proposed reforms. And if you want a detailed explanation, go to our first episode linked above.
Should I watch that? I'll watch it after.
These reforms are particularly crucial.
Okay. Rename commission to executive. Isn't that already... Okay, all right.
Given the increasing number of countries aspiring to join the EU. Imagine a union with 35 or more members. Without some of these reforms, the EU in its existing structure might face operational challenges, making it unworkable. The EU Parliament thought so too, and on November the 22nd last year, the Parliament voted yes to the reform proposals, a significant step forward to a potential convention. A convention, you ask? Well, this is a massive gathering of representatives from the EU governments, national parliaments, the European Parliament, and the European Commission, where treaty reform is discussed and negotiated. After they reach an agreement, each country in the EU has to officially approve these changes. And then at the very end, we have a new treaty, a bit like a constitution for the European Union. So when will we have a convention? Well, there's a final hurdle, the European Council. To start a convention for treaty change, we need a simple majority from the 27 heads of the EU. This means that at least 14 must signal their approval. But scheduled discussions in December turned into a waiting game that stretched into the new year. And now, a quarter into the year, we're still waiting. But there was actually a European Council meeting on March the 23rd, where the topic was discussed. And the latest...
I'm going to keep going, but I really think I should have watched the other one first, because I wish I knew more what these proposals were. I'm hesitant.
Official text...
I can always watch it after, all right?
On March the 23rd, where the topic was discussed. And the latest official text states, and I quote, "The European Council will address internal reforms at an upcoming meeting with a view to adopting by summer 2024 conclusions on a roadmap for future work." Brilliant. That pretty much means no update. But when reading in between the lines, there seems to be division among the leaders. Had there been a consensus, we might have already witnessed the unveiling of a detailed plan, or even better, a decisive vote on the matter. Ursula von der Leyen from the European Commission is also getting involved, releasing an official document to the European Council.
I really want to become more familiar with European leaders because the only person I recognize here is Macron. Where'd he go? Where'd he go?
Better, a decisive vote on the matter.
There he is.
Ursula von der Leyen of a detailed plan.
He's familiar too. Poland, Sweden, Norway. I don't. Okay.
plan, or even better, a decisive vote on the matter. Ursula von der Leyen from the European Commission is also getting involved, releasing an official document to the European Council. The document suggests that the EU can reform within the framework of the current treaties, meaning there's no need for a convention. Basically, a shortcut to EU reform. To be more specific, the document says, while the Commission has indicated its support to treaty change, if and where it is needed, it believes that the EU's governance can be swiftly improved by using the full potential of the current treaties. But is this correct though? Can we make the aforementioned reforms without changing the EU treaties? To answer this very question, we partnered with the Union of European Federalists, today's sponsor, who have helped us go through the European treaties to find out what is actually possible. Established in 1946, the Union of European Federalists has been a steadfast advocate for a European federation. UEF is a cross-border, non-governmental political collective of dedicated individuals fervently working towards the vision of a European federation. We recommend you check them out, as they have some very interesting perspectives on the future of the EU. See their details in the description below. Now, the EU has 4 mechanisms to make changes to its current structures and policies. Yes, it is a bit technical, but bear with us. We're gonna do our brand justice and make it simple. The first mechanism refers to treaty change, which we discussed before. This method allows for broad changes to the EU's foundational treaties. It's the most versatile tool, capable of implementing all the reforms the Parliament might want. This is why it's highly favored by the Parliament, earning a checkmark for being able to address every reform area mentioned. It is also the only mechanism that requires a convention. Then there's a second mechanism, referred to as simplified revision procedure, which allows...
Guys, I am horrible at learning things my first way through. I basically like to, here's a good analogy. Or, you know how if you're painting a room, you need to like paint it and then let it dry and then another layer and maybe another layer? I'm like that, okay? I pick up I need to like go through things a few times. And so here's an example of where I'm kind of handicapped with understanding this stuff is some of the words in here, the terms, I'm still confused with exactly what the European Commission is. I've heard it before, and I probably learned what it is before. I forget. And this is just how I learn. I've never been great, but eventually I'll understand it. So when it's like reform the European Commission, I don't have the ammunition to be able to understand that because I'm not confident exactly what the commission is. Or remove commissioners. Like, I don't know how extreme that is, and it's hard for me to comment on it. The other ones just make sense, though. They commission for the justice. Okay.
Allows for limited adjustments. It offers a way to make minor adjustments to the EU's internal policies without adding new powers or altering the distribution of powers between the EU and its member countries. For example, the creation of a convention. Then there's a second mechanism, referred to as simplified revision procedure, which allows for limited adjustments. It offers a way to make minor adjustments to the EU's internal policies without adding new powers or altering the distribution of powers between the EU and its member countries. For example, the creation of the European Stability Mechanism in 2012, a fund designed to help Eurozone countries in financial trouble. However, this mechanism is really limited in scope and can't tackle big issues like foreign policy, defense, or EU funding structures. Essentially, it falls short in all the major reform areas that we've discussed. This brings us to the third mechanism, known as the
I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. Just fast forward if you want.
Limited in scope and can't tackle big issues like foreign policy, defense, or EU funding structures. Essentially, it falls short in all the major reform areas that we've discussed. This brings us to the third mechanism, known as the Passerelle Clause, the favorite tool of von der Leyen. This clause allows the Council of the European Union to shift from unanimous voting to qualified majority voting in certain areas. This sounds promising, right? So let's tentatively assign check marks to the 3 areas where there are currently vetoes. However, right off the bat, this mechanism does not apply to military and defense, so we have to remove the check.
The problem that I see with implementing some of this stuff, or potential problems, is that take the United States, for example. Government is not perfect. I don't want to get caught in the weeds of the flaws of American government, but which there are many, and I could go on them. But we do have a system where we were very much together. Actually, wait a second. Okay, maybe enough time has passed since America was created in, 1776, or if you want to call it at the end of the war, like 1783 or something, was it? That there's so much time gone past that it's kind of difficult for states to think like, all right, I'm out. Like, I didn't sign up for this. This is getting too much control in the federal government. When the states joined, and as states joined over time, but the original 13 states, so much time has passed that it's much more difficult to be like, all right, I'm out of this. I don't want to be part of this country anymore. I'm going to secede as a state, be my own country. And so having changes, although it might upset people, the reason I said, oh, wait a second, is because, well, there are new things that happen over time that might be contradictory to what states originally signed up for when joining the United States. We're up to 50 now. But with the EU, you're, first of all, already much more different between each other, culturally, linguistically, whatnot, historically, than the United States was. And so if you joined the EU, in the past few decades, as it's been a thing, and you actually can remember it's not that far back, and then they pass some stuff that it's like, all right, now we don't need a unanimous vote, it's just a majority. Well, won't that cause a lot of states to be like, all right, this isn't what I signed up for, I want out of the EU? I feel like I explained that too long there, but I think I got there in the end. To sum up what I'm trying to say, don't you have to worry about changing certain things like the majority vote with people leaving? I hope you understand what I said there.
Also, the mechanism's impact. However, right off the bat, this mechanism does not apply to military and defense, so we have to remove the checkmark there. Also, the mechanism's impact on foreign policy is actually quite minimal. Let us explain why. The European Council and the Council of the European Union are the two main bodies with veto power. The former consists of 27 heads of state, and the latter comprises of ministers from the 27 member states. The Passerelle Clause allows the European Council to enable qualified majority voting in the Council of the European Union by removing the requirement of unanimous consent. Think of it this way: the 27 heads of state agree that their ministers can take qualified majority voting decisions instead of the usual unanimous voting. However, the irony is that the bulk of foreign policy decisions are actually made within the European Council, where the Passerelle Clause's ability to shift from unanimous voting to qualified majority voting does not apply. So, to simplify all of this, with the Passerelle Clause, can the veto on foreign policy be lifted? No, at least only in a very limited capacity. Lastly, the Passerelle Clause also cannot be used to modify the decision of EU resources, which still have to be decided by unanimity. So that's another limited for fiscal policy. And in all the other reform areas, you ask? Well, no. The much hyped Passerelle Clause cannot change any of them. Some suggest a fourth mechanism for EU
Is gonna
reform,
have an effect?
which deals with Article 49, typically used for EU accession. The idea is that the negotiations for new country memberships could serve as an opportunity for broader EU treaty revision. But this is simply not the article's purpose. Adjustments are aimed solely at integrating new members without reshaping the EU's foundational structures or principles. We've looked into this treaty, and it's really a no-go for any of these proposed reforms. At EU Made Simple, we think there's no other option than treaty reform. The Commission's fantasy of using the passerelle clause is very distracting and falls short of what is really needed. We need to be more ambitious and enhance the EU's democracy, streamline the EU's decision-making processes, and improve the EU's capacity to address global challenges. And the only thing that can do that is treaty reform.
As I've said before, and you can tell by now, I am very uninformed on this stuff. However, address some kind of... it'll make it more streamlined in being able to pass a lot of things, but are you saying that there was no reason to the more... You're acting like there is no reason for any of those stops to be in place, and that every one of them just needs to be streamlined, and that there are going to be no negative repercussions. I as most people, I don't like a government that works extremely slowly, right? But I don't want a government that has no hesitance at all, right? That might even be more dangerous, definitely more dangerous, but worse off. So I think you have to find a middle ground, and just saying, as I'm getting the feeling here, that, streamline, stop this. All right, plurality vote, get this unanimous voting out of here. That kind of attitude towards reforming anything that is important, especially as important as the EU, is scary, all right? It's frustrating to not want any reform and basically have a drip kind of way of how the EU operates, super slowly and can't get anything done. Nobody wants that. So that's frustrating, but too much just... I think you need to worry about, or need to think about, why you had those stops, why you had the inability to do this stuff in the first place, and then get rid of things that people agree on pretty close to unanimously, and that so it won't have some bad effect or even break off of some countries leaving the EU. Hope I explained that right. My words are not wording today.
To address global challenges, and the only thing that can do that is treaty reform. Even if you do not agree with all of these changes, let's at least talk about them in a convention, which is also much more democratic than all the other options we discussed in the video today. So, no, Ursula, your idea is simply not good enough, and we really hope that the European Council in June will vote in favor of treaty reform and not opt for unviable alternatives. So what can you do? To voice your support or opposition to EU treaty change, exploring the European Parliament's voting record is a powerful way to start. Here you can see how the political groups voted for the Parliament's proposal to amend the treaties. I think it's self-explanatory, but very quickly, green shows the percentage of MEPs within that political group that voted for the proposal to amend the treaties, red is against, and white shows the percentage of MEPs that abstained.
What do you know? It's the Green Party that yeah, this makes sense. I can tell which parties are more progressive or conservative on the topic of the EU just by this graph here. Just to reiterate what I'm trying to say one more time, okay? Take in the US like I think for, say, impeaching a president, okay? I'm pretty sure you need a majority vote in the House, but then a 2/3 vote in the Senate. Even if that's not exactly correct there, my point will still stand, I think. And you might say, well, why not just have a if you have too many people that need to agree in order to get rid of a president, well, then what's the point of impeachment if you can never get rid of a president that could be dangerous to the country? But if you have, say, a majority vote, just 50% or 51%, then you're going to be able to a ridiculous extent, just throw presidents out left and right, depending on just who gets in charge. So I think there's a healthy balance in having a majority vote in some cases and if not complete agreement in, everyone agreeing. I'm forgetting the term. But I think it's most comfortable for me, I guess, thinking about something like this, to have someone who's a bit in the middle. And, because if you want no change at all or just a drip, very slight change, then it looks like you don't want to improve much in society at all. And if you want to change too much, then it looks like you're not afraid or concerned at all at what the negative repercussions of changing too much could be. And one side is frustrating, one side is scary, and I think that there needs to be some sort of a middle thing.
So, quite surprising actually,
depending on
the most pro-treaty reform were the Greens/EFA, followed by the S&D, and then Renew Europe. The ECR and IND, on the other hand, are the most against. So keep that in mind when you go to the polls in June. But we'll be keeping a close eye on these developments, and a part 4 of the series will follow in June. And of course, many more in case of a convention. So subscribe to stay informed, and check out the first video, linked above, for a more detailed explanation of the reform proposal. A big thank you to our sponsor, the Union of European Federalists. And thank you so much for watching. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please consider signing up to Patreon. Big thank you to our sponsor, the
Union Euro Pasture. Very interesting. Hope you guys are all doing well. Would appreciate any comments. When it comes to me, and I've had this problem since I was a kid in school, my brain is I feel like I often have such a difficult time when learning, and when I don't understand one small thing or big thing, then I can't compartmentalize that and then continue to learn. I have to stop. My brain just cannot focus until that one small thing, even if it's not crucial to understanding the rest of the story or lesson. And so I'm sure there are a lot of things that you're like, wait, you just heard that. How aren't you understanding that? That's why I wasn't the best student, but I do love learning as I get older, more and more about politics and politics outside of the U.S. Very interesting. Hope you're all doing well. Would appreciate any comments. See you next time. Bye, guys.